The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. Socrates. DC Tribe, Josh Thomas. If you haven't already, check out thedozone.com for productivity tips, accountability, and just a bunch of really badass human beings looking to get more stuff done. Once again, that's thedozone.com. Today's guest is Patrick Grimes. Patrick is the CEO and founder of Invest on Main Street, with holdings that include general partner ownership of a multifamily real estate portfolio valued over $300 million, including 3,000 plus units across the southeastern United States and Texas. Patrick co-authored an Amazon #1 best-selling book, Persistence, Pivots, and Game Changers, and writes articles on investing and commercial real estate for Forbes and Inman Author. Patrick, so glad to have you on here today. Welcome to the Do Zone. Say what's up to the tribe and tell us something you believe is the key to getting stuff done that most people wouldn't think of.
Well, I'm excited to be here, Josh. I've, followed you for quite some time and even participated in a mastermind, program. Was very impressed by your capability and your skills, and helped me, certainly launched me forward. And hey to the tribe out there on the Do Zone. It's definitely a topic that rings true to me. And so what is something that most people don't think about is was your question, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, I, without diving into too many details, perfection is something that you'll never reach. And I struggled my whole life trying to do things all on my own. And it wasn't until I started partnering with both partners at my level and bringing on employees and virtual assistants and contractors that I was able to scale. I think the challenge was keeping control over the process. And I think the best tip I could probably share that a lot of people don't think about is when you start to document your processes and try and get control over your procedures. There's this kind of idea that you have to have a perfectly written standard operating procedure for everything in your business. And it's simply not true. In fact, we run forward, and then the minute we see something that didn't work out right, we create a Google Doc and we'll just title it a procedure for such and such. And then that one piece of the process that needed better direction we'll document. And then as we move forward, if something else breaks down, the next one piece of that process will document. And we don't have a procedure that shows all the steps of everything, because a lot of it's common sense and a lot of it requires some intuitive. But where it breaks down is when we need to provide direction and we need to provide control gates, and then that's all we document. So I think it's better to just dive in there and start with a piece of the puzzle to fix when it breaks down, and not try and fix something that's not broken.
Yeah, well said. And what you're really alluding to here is about building the airplane while it's in the air, building the ship while it's out to sea. Mm-hmm. I've heard that said a few different ways. But what you're saying is, look, let's start running. And if one of our muscles gets tweaked, let's take care of that when it comes up.
Yeah.
And have you always thought that way, or is that a kind of a new development recently? Because I know you've had some kind of stratospheric success recently. So is this something that you just kind of figured out as you were going?
Well, my story is I was very much, I did high-tech machine design and robotics. So I was working with a lot of very interesting, intelligent people in my space. But in the real estate world, I've been working in real estate about 2 years less than I've been doing engineering. But in the real estate world, I felt like I needed to do all the jobs myself. So I did a pre-development and I rode down a downturn. I got into single family. I was finding the deals, analyzing the deals, taking them down, managing the renovations, all that stuff all on my own. So no, I wasn't. I was using my own money. I wasn't bringing in a lot of assistance and help along the way. It wasn't until I decided to pivot into multifamily, because but single family was working. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I was successful, and it's hard to think outside of the status quo, because if something's working, but it's still a lot of time away from my family, friends, and hobbies. And when I met my wife, I needed to do something that freed it up. So it wasn't until I started partnering up with people that were much more successful, trusting and verifying that, and working towards a much greater vision, but leveraging the capabilities of others, that I began to see tremendous success in scaling into multifamily syndications. And being the master's in engineering and MBA grad, I felt like I needed to follow the textbook business plan at first. It took me 2.5 years before I got into a multifamily deal, and I was trying to, again, control every step, do everything myself. But then I realized, well, that's not how the partners I'm working with do. They run for it. When something breaks down, then they go to the time to document what broke down. And then they have gates and controls in for that one piece, but they don't go write a standard operating procedure for every single part of their business, right? And that just simply doesn't make sense. And you need to hire people that don't need that, but you can still write them as you need them, or whatever pieces are that you need them, I guess, was what I was referring to earlier. But
well, yeah, I think what you're really leaning into here is you are a very methodical person, and robotics, mechanical engineering and robotics, and that sounds complicated.
Oh yeah.
And 100%. It sounds very exacting and very precise. And it also sounds like in order for you to even run a test, you have to create the exact right environment. You have to remove all of the variables. And before you can even push the button, because you're dealing with a machine that may cost millions of dollars, you got to make sure everything is correct before you push that button, because if not, you could have an expensive mistake on your hands. And what you learned, you tried to transfer that into real estate, and then that was sort of working, but it was a grind. What I really extracted from that is when you started surrounding yourself with other people who were operating differently, and they were achieving more success faster than you were, it kind of clicked something in your brain. Is that what happened?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I started seeing that, you can trust, you can find the right partners. And it took years to find what I felt like were the right like-minded partners with the right value set. But you can modeling their success in the ways that they were able to empower and bring the right people under the umbrella to launch them forward. Absolutely. Yeah. And things really start to go forward at that point. And the analysis paralysis of the high-tech machine design guy that I was, because you're absolutely right. Every custom machine that we built was a one-of-a-kind operating prototype that was the final product. You don't really have a lot of margin for error. So, I like to say, I never won the quote, I never won a war that went to plan, but I never won a war that I didn't plan thoroughly. I can't remember who that was, Napoleon or Winston Churchill or something. But for me, that makes a lot of sense, because it leans into the analysis that we do in our deals. You've got to plan to win those wars, right? And it's not going to go to plan, but you can analyze to a point to where you have a plan that will win in the battlefield, but then you've got to be kind of agile as you go.
So let's get some perspective, because being in the high-tech industry, designing machines, designing robots, multi-million-dollar one-of-a-kind prototypes, you are the poster child of analysis paralysis.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Nobody in this planet should have more permission than you to say, wait, let's make sure this is right. And so you were able to, I won't say overcome that, but harness and manage it. And I bet that there's somebody listening to this podcast right now that is contemplating whether or not they should take that action, whether they should make that decision, whether they should make that investment, whether they should start that business, whether they should partner up with that one guy. How can you, like, you kind of yada over the best part, right? Like, how did you make that shift? You, of all people, with this background that you have, how were you able to ultimately, like, okay, I'm going to be like those guys?
Well, somebody told me when I was at an event that there's a lot of successful engineers in real estate, but I was going to I made the comment back to him. I think there's a lot more that are still analyzing the possibility of getting into real estate because it's really, to your point, it's there's a lot more. It's not as it's you can calculate some, but there's a lot of environmental factors at play there that some can. And I think at the end of the day, I went through a downturn. I went through the '08 downturn in pre-development. I've seen how the financial models can break down. And I've seen how the lending environment, the debt markets, and I've seen how the consumer markets for the demand can shift. And I think that having gone through a loss gave me a perspective on how you can fortify a real estate deal to survive that. I mean, and right now, it took me a while to find the right strategies, and I picked up courses like the lamps. Like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. I was like shedding light here and there. Oh, go this way or that way, or vacation rentals or blah blah, whatever. But then I finally started to see like, okay, this is a longer path, but this multifamily in recession resilient markets with employment makeup that's diversified, that has in the past survived recessions, very low leverage. So not real high returning deals, but you're not going to lose it all along the way. You're going to be the tortoise with a fortified shell with a lot of capital reserves in the bank. Again, a little lower returns. Find the right partners that are willing to take these deals down with me, and the investors that are willing to accept a high risk adjusted return or a low risk return. I think when I finally leaned into that and I got through all the noise of, the get rich quick and the people that really had a sustained model, was when I was able to finally lean in and, you know what, this makes a lot of sense. When I found that partner, we just started doing deals, worked a little harder to find those investors that are okay with a 15% return and not a 30% return, right? But they know they won't lose it all along the way. And I think that's where it really started to make sense. And I can speak from a passion of understanding and experience towards the model itself.
And so that's a great segue into a more specific topic about what you're doing with multifamily. And so you and I know each other, and we're connected because of multifamily. And I get the question all of the time, like, well, is now the right time to invest? Things are kind of bananas right now, man. I think I should wait until the market cools off, or I think I should wait till the market heats up, or I think I should wait for any time that's not right now, to contemplate the possibilities of getting into real estate, like your engineer friends are doing. What kind of perspective have you been able to gain as somebody who did go ahead and jump in, who has lived through a downturn? What do you say about people who are not sure if now's the right time to get in?
Well, so I was having this conversation with some of my investors, and I've been planning for this recession since I went through the last one. And I've been structuring deals assuming, in fact, every single one of our decks has the line, this is built around us going through another 8, 9, and 10, right? Type of bust again. So I'm in the asset because, and this business model because of its recession resilience. And I know that we can ride out a recession and still cash flow. And so when we're in it or on the cusp of it, I see opportunity. There's opportunity for us, the individuals that have found investors willing to take a little lower return for investments that are in the emerging markets, but will weather the storm. And I can kind of go into a couple of because I talk to thousands of investors. And so, the buzzwords of inflation and interest rate and all this stuff, I can kind of touch on a couple of those if you'd like me to.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, it's not a real estate podcast, but we've got a lot of people out there that are looking for strategic ways to place their funds. And a lot of people are pulling things out and going with cash right now, and that's okay. But at a high level, somebody that's not sure if they should invest in real estate because of the timing, because of the market, what are some general recommendations that you can make to either help somebody feel better about investing in real estate, or to cement their decision that, okay, I'm going to wait? Like some general guidelines that somebody might look for at a high level.
Yeah. So if you're a single family or a multifamily fix and flipper, this is the wrong time to do that. And I would actually argue that it's always the wrong time to do that. And because I used to do it, and there's an outsized level of litigation, legal, and financial risk associated with that model. But if you're talking about real estate in commercial assets, commercial multifamily type of real estates, then, and you're not potentially doing it yourself, you're going at it with a sponsor or a firm that is modeled around fixing interest rates for long periods of time, so that you're not at interest rate risk. Right now, we're buying rate caps or doing long-term fixed interest, which means the interest rates we're locking in today are going to be advantageous because we're getting cheaper debt than we will tomorrow. So with interest rates rising, we're actually getting a cheaper asset. Our buying power is higher today. So down the road, somebody's more likely to assume our loan than to restructure the deal if we sell, because they'll be buying an asset with a lower interest rate, right? So it's actually on the rise. It makes sense to buy and lock if they're locking in interest rates, like we are. If inflation's on the rise, right? Well, I have an article in Forbes. You can look at Patrick Grimes' Forbes and inflation, which talks about how in rental income property, specifically large multifamily properties, we tend to make money with inflation. And that's because our rents in the workforce housing that we don't do new construction, just existing construction. Our rents track with inflation. Well, sure, our expenses do too, but our expenses are only half our rents. So our rents only have to grow at half the rate the expenses do to break even. So traditionally, it's not only a hedge against inflation, but oftentimes we can make money, more return by an outsized proportion in an inflationary environment. Now, on the other side, you're saying, well, what if the residents can't afford the greater price? Well, that's why we go for sort of what we call that, not luxury prime and urban housing, but because those tend to be during a recession when people move out of the single family, but they move out into the existing like $1 in gas or $1 for milk's really not going to affect their ability to pay their rent. Meanwhile, what you find out is their buying power has gone down during a recession, so they're going to continue to rent. It's not the right time to buy a home. Yeah. So we find compression or more demand for our units through a recession in an inflationary environment.
So it's really fascinating to me that you kind of flip the script here. Well, interest rates are going up. That's a great time to buy, because it means that as interest rates continue to rise, it's only going to make our asset cheaper and more attractive to somebody because we have a lower interest rate and it's fixed. That's a new perspective that I had not quite heard before. So yeah, that's awesome. Patrick, go ahead.
No, there's layers to it, but we can only cover so much, because they may say, well, if interest rate prices will go down. Well, we do a strategy which we buy under market and we raise prices and we raise income, and inflation will raise with us, right? And so there's lots of levels to it, but it is the reason why we're in the strategy, is to make money in recessions, is to hedge with downturns and build generational wealth. And the wealthy have been investing in multifamily and storing their capital too. It's there for many, many late generations. It's just now that we've started doing syndications that's available to us, that we can benefit from that as well.
That's right. And Patrick, it's fascinating. I love how your brain works, especially with that kind of building machines background and turning that towards real estate. What I'd love to do is I'd love to crack open that beautiful noggin of yours and see how your brain works. We're going to do this do zone diagnostic. Are you ready?
Okay. All right. Diagnostic. Here we go.
Yep. So this is a series of 5 questions I ask every guest so that we can see how your brain works and soak up all that knowledge that we can. Just rapid fire. First thing that comes to mind. Number 1, what's one thing you do that keeps you focused on your goals?
So in the morning, I run on the beach here, and I listen to podcasts and thought leadership platforms, and I take moments to that reset my brain in that thought leadership space and the inspirational space, and then I reset my daily objectives during those runs.
Nice. And what do you do, Patrick, to get back on track when you lose that focus?
Depends on how far out of focus I am.
Mhm.
I oftentimes will go on little retreats for myself. Like I've spent a week in Sedona. I spent a week at a meditation retreat. I've traveled the world twice, a couple of years abroad. So it depends on how, after I've done like master's programs, I've been a bit of a traveler.
Nice. Yeah, I have more questions about that later. But first, who is your support group and how do they keep you accountable?
Well, Josh, you were it for every day for a little while when when I joined your program in the morning. That was an amazing launch forward for our business, and I appreciated that. And so there is a couple masterminds that I'm a part of that tackle different areas of my business. Some on the real estate operation side, and some on the real estate capital raising side. And it's great to be able to come there, get accountability for what I'm working on, state my objectives, and then just be real about the struggles that I'm having, and then just be affirmed that everybody's having them too, and work and navigate through them.
Nice. And here's an interesting question to see how your brain really works. How do you approach a difficult project that you're not quite sure how to complete?
So, I being in the high tech space, every single project I've ever done was a one of a kind machine. So that would be my everyday life. And I tend to spend time researching how others are approaching it. I reach out on Indeed or Upwork to speak to some consultants or people that are experts in the niche, and then kind of compile and see what kind of similar answers I'm getting. And then we give it a shot at little steps at a time, right? And then reassess and then tackle.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And last question, what's the number one pro tip that you would give to somebody looking to get more stuff done in less time?
Time blocking has got to be it, because the time blocking component really has the two components to it. It's trying to figure out the few things, what's the 10% of things that will actually move the needle for your company, and blocking out time for that, because I could be busy every day keeping the status quo. But if I didn't time block out of my week, what are the few activities that'll make everything unnecessary that I can do, then I wouldn't ever get to them.
Yeah, you got it, man. Makes sense. And I'm a big fan of time blocking myself. And so that's one of the things that you were able to do to make this transition into real estate. And we've been talking about real estate. You've been displaying some of your expertise. Tell us a little bit more about that. I know you've got a book. Tell us about the book. Tell us about anybody who's listening right now that may want to engage with you. What does that person need to look like, and what ways can you help them?
Preferably a little more hair than I have. I prefer. No. Yeah. So Invest on Main Street. We're doing deals in low risk markets, low risk assets, and structuring them financially in a very low risk way. And so we're currently working on opportunities in Atlanta and Texas. So obviously, if people want to meet, I'd love to meet them if there's some interest. I have a book, Persistence, Pivots, and Game Changers: Turning Challenges and Opportunities. Brian Tracy did the foreword. There's NFL, NBA coaches, players, entrepreneurs, artists, and Phil Collins of the lead guitarist of the Def Leppard all did a chapter in this, and myself with hair, and that's not a wig. I used to actually have hair. And it made an Amazon #1 bestseller. It was a really fun project full of great stories from amazing people. I'd be happy to give a free copy to your listeners if they want to go to investonmainstreet.com, investonmain and then street.com, and then set up a call and we can talk about your goals. But right now, what we're looking at is I had been keeping my head to the grinding stone and getting deals done for many years. And I'm finally getting my name out there. I've been doing podcasts. I'm a Forbes author. I've got half a dozen articles, speak towards knowledge and this book. So I'm working on giving back to the people and that I work with, and I have a passion for helping people along their journey.
That's awesome. And so investonmainstreet.com, and they can book a call and speak directly with you or somebody on your team, right?
Yeah. Well, right now I'm taking those calls, and worst case is you end up with an Amazon #1 bestseller and we'll ship it to you. So
yeah, awesome. And so if somebody's going to book that call and talk to you, can you describe, aside from them having more hair than you, can you describe who would be a good fit to potentially talk to you about investing in multifamily?
Well, I think traditionally, most individuals have what you call a very narrow financial IQ, not because it's their fault, but because America traditionally leaves it up to the 401k account of somebody's employer. Maybe they've earned enough to grow into getting their own IRA in addition to that, supplementing that. Maybe they've even got a financial planner, and that financial planner is putting them into products. But what you find is all three of these are heavily weighted in the stock market. Financial planners, IRA will only put you in similar things. Financial planners are incentivized and don't practice selling away. Will only put you in the same kind of index funds and mutual funds. So what if somebody's wanting to get into real estate, wanting to diversify into real estate, I've helped individuals invest cash or help take a piece of their IRA or 401k and self-direct it and put it into income generating real estate in emerging markets, or do your rental properties, which can have outsized risk from a legal or financial perspective if you're doing it in your own name, and 1031 exchange those into larger apartment buildings as a partner with us. Or I have friends that are individuals that booked the time saying, look, we own our house outright. We've got $2 million, but we're still going to work for another 10 years. Does that make sense? And they got a HELOC. They invested in mine and a couple other deals, and they retired the following year because they decided to put some of their home equity to work. So, those are all potential things that I help people do. So if any of that applies, and or just want to poke fun at me for losing my hair, happy to do the call.
Yeah, it's like the sixth time you brought up your
yeah.
And it's like, for those of you that are just listening audio, there's a picture of Patrick on the cover of the book where he very clearly has hair.
Right.
And the one that I'm looking at on the video very clearly has misplaced that hair. And maybe someday it'll come back, man. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'm still getting used to it. So I had an investor call and say, oh, you have this little wave. Good job shaving your hair off, because there was this little wave on your forehead. I'm like, oh my gosh.
No, that wasn't a shave, buddy. Awesome. Well, Patrick, this has been excellent, especially the little mini clinic in there about investing during a potential recession and during a record-breaking inflation, and just flipping that on its head and saying, well, actually, that's a good thing. That right there was worth the price of admission. So thank you very much for coming on here and sharing your time with us. Patrick Grimes, everybody. For those of you who are interested in connecting with him directly, he has graciously offered a free copy of his Amazon #1 bestseller, which is called Persistence, Pivots, and Game Changers. If you go to investonmainstreet.com, go to investonmainstreet.com, and you can schedule a call. You can speak with Patrick or someone on his team, and they will be happy to answer any questions that you have about potentially investing in real estate and see if it might be a good fit for you. You can also connect with us on thedozone.com. We're also on the social medias. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. If you are a busy entrepreneur looking to get to the next level, you want to check that out, thedozone.com, for more productivity tips, tools, and strategies. Until next time, remember, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. What are you going to do with yours?